Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Retirement Compass, the show that helps you successfully navigate to and through your retirement. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and joining me in the studio are two members from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. We have Tim Kulhanek, who is the co-founder, and partner Jeremy Gove. We've got a great show for you today. The reality is that success in retirement is not about how much you have, it's about how much you get to keep. And yet what a lot of folks don't understand is that taxes are one of the biggest threats to them being able to keep their hard-earned wealth. So what can be done about this problem, and what steps can you take today to proactively lower your tax bill in retirement? That's what we're going to be talking about and so much more. Tim, Jeremy, so good to be here with both of you this week. How are you?
Great. Pleasure to be back.
Yeah, good. And I know taxes is one of your favorite topics, right?
Yeah, it's so enjoyable.
That's how exciting of individuals we are.
Yes.
Right?
Come see us. We'll talk about taxes.
Well, what's exciting is when you can help people pay less to the IRS, right?
Absolutely.
That's what it's really all about, for sure.
That is helpful, yes.
Well, and the reason we need to set this up and help folks understand why it's so problematic is for years we have been taught and told and conditioned to save as much as possible in something like a traditional 401k, traditional IRA, and that this was a really good thing for us because it's tax-deferred money, and supposedly when you are in retirement and you go to pull that money out, you should be in a lower tax bracket. But a lot of folks are finding out today that that's not the case, and therefore we want to help them potentially lower that tax bill, because if you aren't choosing when you're paying taxes, guess what? The IRS is going to choose for you, and it's going to be in their best interest, not yours. So we want to flip the script on that. We are all about your best interests here on this show. So let's just start with that, Tim. From your perspective, what is it about taxes that is becoming so problematic for retirees today?
Well, the simple thing is that, you know, we can blame a single year for all of this, and it's 1974, right? The Rubik's Cube came out, the UPC, the first UPC was scanned, Watergate, we had a transition mid-administration, and Congress passed the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which was kind of the birthplace of these IRAs that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, since then there's been a lot of legislation that has impacted these types of accounts. They become the primary source of retirement savings for today's retirees, for the baby boomer generation. And I think for the first time in history, we're talking about the late end of the baby boomers, achieving retirement age or reaching retirement age, and then Gen X to come after them, that you'll be able to say that, no, I won't be in a lower tax bracket in retirement because the government's going to be forced to raise your tax bill. Mm-hmm. And so you fast forward, you look at the 2006 Pension Protection Act, you look at the 2019 Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement or SECURE Act, then SECURE 2.0 came along, I think, in 2022. Mm-hmm. And according to, if you just quote Ed Slott, who's a CPA, he said, look, folks, an IRA is just an IOU to the IRS. Mm-hmm. That's where we're at. So we need to understand that, you know, IRAs, it's like having a joint owner. We think an IRA stands for what, Jeremy? Individual retirement account. Keyword is individual. Well, it's just mine, right? Well, not really, because you have a silent partner. Mm-hmm. And that's Uncle Sam, IRS, however you want to put it. And the crazy thing is, it's like going into partnership where you unilaterally have the ability to change the terms of the agreement at any time. Mm-hmm. You get a vote every single year on how much your partner gets and how much you get of the profits, and they don't. And that's the relationship we have with the government on these retirement accounts. So that's why it's so critical, because the bulk, there's like $40+ trillion in these retirement accounts today, and the vast majority is tax deferred, which is subject to these legislative risks we're talking about.
For sure. And I think, and I'd love for you to speak to this, Jeremy, why folks get so blindsided by taxes is there's this convergence, especially in the decade of your 60s and 70s, where all these different pieces of your retirement plan are now coming together, which can increase taxation. Can you touch on each of those?
Yeah, so they're blindsided because you don't realize that it's a problem until you're there. Yeah. And so that's why I think it's important for us to educate and talk about it. So to Tim's point, we're always told, you know, when we start saving money into a 401k or a qualified account, it's your taxes are going to be lower because your income will be lower in retirement. Mm-hmm. Or your taxes will be lower, you'll be in a lower bracket. And I'll kind of walk through the history of that. In 1960, the private sector employees were covered by a pension it was about 50% of the employees were covered by a private pension or a pension that was provided by their employer. So retirement, it wasn't the responsibility of the employee, it was the employer that was providing that, right? So then that shifted in the 80s, as Tim mentioned, we had the pensions, traditional pensions switched from a traditional pension to a 401k. And the reason that they started moving to 401ks, the high costs, the increasing government regulations, employees, when they left, they couldn't take their pension with them. So with a 401k, they could. And so then to Tim's point, in 2006, the Pension Protection Act imposed stricter rules and regulations on pensions. And so it just became, from an employer standpoint, it became very cost prohibitive to offer pensions. And so what you end up having is this idea of, now it's my responsibility to save for retirement, but nobody's ever taught me how to do that. Nobody's ever talked about what are my taxes going to look like when I do retire.
Right.
And we've talked a lot about this on a lot of our shows, on the radio show and these events where we're talking about taxes. And there's, when we have a national debt that's as high as it is, and we have this gigantic piggy bank of, what did you say, Tim? $40 trillion?
Over $40 trillion, I think.
You know, the government has always been really good at looking at that and saying, well, there's an income source, let's go get money from there.
Right.
And so we save this money, and some of the rules that have changed with the Secure Act 1.0, 2.0, they've moved our retirement required minimum distribution age from 70 and a half to 73 and now to 75. And so what does that do? That allows that piggy bank to continue to grow,
right?
Especially for those people that don't need that income right now.
Yeah, which means when you go to pull that money out, the IRS is going to get a bigger chunk of it in the form of taxes.
Exactly, exactly. And so you have this situation where you have, I'm 75 years old, maybe my spouse lives another 5 years, and I have to keep pulling money out of this account, and then now where I'm filing married joint, that's a different tax bracket than if I'm filing single.
Yeah.
And so that's where those issues come really into play.
Yeah. And also what comes to my mind is that convergence of now you're receiving Social Security, right? That can increase your taxable income.
Exactly.
Now you have Medicare, and your Medicare premiums are based on your income from 2 years prior. That means you could be paying more in Medicare when RMDs hit. I mean, there's just this convergence of all these things that don't necessarily make your tax situation more favorable in retirement, as we were conditioned and taught that, oh yeah, if you save this money in these tax-deferred accounts, then it'll be really good for you when you come to retirement, right?
Yeah, so we've got different tools that we use. I'll tell you about one that we use in our office, and then you can maybe share a little bit about some of the things that we've made available for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
But in our office, we use a tool called Tax Clarity from some of our friends over in Gove, and it shows the interplay between things like Social Security, RMDs, dividends, qualified versus ordinary dividends, capital gains, long-term versus short-term. And all of a sudden you start seeing that a decision I make to take money out of an IRA, for example, it's not as intuitive as you thought. You might think like, hey, you know what, my taxable income is only $30,000, and it means I could take $16,700 out of a retirement account because that's the standard deduction, is $46,700 if I'm 65 plus, married, and my income is below $150,000 post One Big Beautiful Bill Act. But that's not necessarily how it works, because that distribution you take, let's just say you were 10,000, let's say it was 36.7, you thought you could take 10 to get to 46.7. You take 10,000 out, but that might cause 85% of 10,000 Social Security dollars to become taxable, right? So now instead of paying tax on $10,000, you might be paying tax on $18,500. And that could potentially cause some long-term capital gain to be pushed from non-taxable to taxed at 15%. So it's kind of a domino effect. We've got a very sophisticated tool that will show you all of that. We call it a tax map that'll show you your taxes in a way you've never seen before. But we've also developed some tools that even our viewers at home can utilize today and get a better feel on what impact taxes are going to have on their retirement.
Yes, which we will get to when we come back from this break. But what would your encouragement be to someone who's sitting there going, I hadn't realized that all these things I need to be paying attention to, that there is more control, I have more choice than I think I do when it comes to taxes. What would your encouragement be to them?
I would say that, again, there's two types of people, right? There's those that hear a message like this and they fall victim to Parkinson's law that we talked about in another show, where the amount of time available for a task is going to expand based off of essentially the due date. So you can either procrastinate and just kind of fly through the seat, fly by the seat of your pants through life as a passenger, or you can take action today. You can call the number at the bottom of your screen, say, hey, I'd like that tax map that Tim and Jeremy were talking about on the show the other day. And it's complimentary, no cost, no obligation. That comes as part of our written financial plan. We're going to go through the 5 key areas of planning when you come in. But at the end of the day, our goal is for when you leave our office, you have you feel like you have confidence and understanding of what your financial situation truly is. And you can kind of put to bed those questions you had on when can I retire, my money lasts as long as I need it to. You're going to have answers to those when you meet with one of our experienced advisors.
And the best way to get started is just making that simple phone call, right? So Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. We encourage you, if you've not yet looked at the potential tax burden of your IRA or 401k, you're going to want to continue watching today's show. As Tim mentioned, we're going to share a very powerful resource for you when you come back. But this is a great opportunity for you to go ahead and get started on this process of receiving your very own complimentary written financial plan. To claim yours, simply call 866-256-7778. Or if you'd rather connect online, simply scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more for you right after this.
If you think about the average American consumer, we don't talk about financial topics very often. And so we spend a lot of time at Stonebridge doing educational seminars and different things that are free of charge. If you're not educated in a topic, how do you make educated decisions? When you're working with a client, you're sitting down with them, they're a little stressed out, but after you go through the process and you really take time to educate them on not only what we're doing for them, but why we're doing it, that really gives them peace of mind, and you can see the weight just kind of drops. And when they leave, I hear all the time,
I really should have done this years ago. But sometimes there's a fear that somebody might try to sell us something. If the things that I can provide, if you don't want, don't need, or can't use those, I've got some good news for you. We're not going to sell them to you. We are fulfilling our fiduciary duty of putting their interests ahead of our own.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass. I'm Kristin Oakley here with both Tim and Jeremy from Stonebridge Wealth Systems, and we're so glad that you're spending this time with us today. If you're just tuning in, today's episode is all about choosing taxes on your terms. Did you realize that you might have more control over your tax situation than you might think? We're going to be sharing ways for you to create greater tax efficiency throughout your full financial plan. And one of those resources that we want to go ahead and unveil for you is a very awesome piece of software that you can access at home completely for free. So we're going to put this site for you here on the bottom of your screen. StonebridgeTaxBill.com is the site you want to visit, or you can scan that QR code. I'm going to walk you through this in just a minute and how to utilize it. But what has the response been from folks who have used this tool and then come in and met with you?
Yeah, I think they're shocked at the amount of taxes that they're going to pay if they don't do anything. And so, yeah, it's a huge surprise. And I think even we were, when we first started putting that calculator together and started using it, it's not a super in-depth analysis, but it's a great tool for somebody that's just sitting at home and wants to see, what are my potential liabilities? What could that look like?
Yep.
They can do that, and then set up a time to come into the office, and we can actually walk through and put the tax map together and do some of the other stuff.
For sure. It's very eye-opening, and I think awareness is the first step, understanding that there is a potential problem, right? That there is that potential tax bomb ticking in your retirement. So listen, we know the deal. Your smartphone's sitting right there. Go ahead, grab it, visit the site, StonebridgeTaxBill.com, or you can get there by scanning this QR code, and here is what you're going to see. It's going to take you to the simple landing page. It'll ask you to put in your name, your current age, because what it's going to do is actually calculate for you the potential tax bill for the rest of your life. So we need to know how old you are to be able to do that. Then you're also going to put in the email address that you want the complimentary report sent to, no strings attached, along with how much money you have currently saved up in tax-deferred accounts, things like traditional 401ks, traditional IRAs, things of that nature. You'll notice there's also 2 little sliders down there that you can adjust and play around with. One is your assumed tax liability. The other is the assumed growth rate on that tax-deferred bucket of money. Then, once you click submit, two things are going to happen. First up, instantly, you're going to see side by side the difference between the government's tax plan for you there on the left if you do nothing versus how much less you could pay in tax on the right-hand side if you enact some of these tax saving strategies and solutions that we're going to be talking about throughout the rest of today's show. But that's not all. You're also going to receive a complimentary 4-page report emailed to you. This is a screenshot of 1 page of that report that will show you the breakdown of your numbers side by side. And guys, just with this example, I think what's so mind-blowing for folks, this person had $400,000 saved up in tax-deferred accounts, assumed tax liability of 20%, assumed growth rate of 5%. Look at that bottom line there. It could be, if this person did nothing, they're going to have to pay more in tax over the rest of their life than they started off with in the account. I mean, it's crazy, right?
It's five times as much if you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
I frame it this way. I say there's a mandatory tax bill you have, and then there's an optional one. The mandatory one, I can't change that. Like when people talk about Roth conversion, sometimes they think like, oh, well, somehow I get out of paying tax. No, you're going to pay tax. The question is at what rate?
And how much?
How much?
Yes.
And so by doing these conversions, now you have to be strategic about it because, like, again, you've got One Big Beautiful Bill Act, OB3 is what I call it. Well, it's chock full of gives and take backs. So there's phase-ins and phase-outs. So if I'm a married couple filing jointly, the 22% bracket basically doesn't exist.
Right.
So once I get to 150,000 of adjusted gross income, essentially I start phasing out of the additional 6,000 per person. So I'm going to pay it a lot higher tax. So I can't just like YOLO this thing and just shoot from the hip and say, I'm going to convert 150,000 because there's IRMAs, there's the phase outs, there's a lot of different things to consider. There's net investment income tax. But if you do it strategically, and what our reports will do, will show you it'll be all encompassing, all of the different taxes you would potentially be exposed to, and the tax savings, eye-opening doesn't even do it justice.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've mentioned the term Roth conversions. For some folks, there's a lot of miscommunication, misinformation, confusion about what a Roth conversion actually is. Can you break it down and explain how this actually works?
Yeah, so essentially you're just buying the government out, right? Because remember I said earlier that an IRA is technically like a joint account, but your joint owner, joint partner in that account is the IRS. You're saying, I'm going to buy them out today at a rate I know versus postponing the tax bill on this account, on this dollar amount, to some point in the future where the rate could be stratospherically higher. Now, don't take my word for it. We could look at David Walker, right? Former Comptroller General of the U.S. government. So he ran the Government Accountability Office, basically. He said in his 2010 New York Times bestselling book, Come Back America, that tax rates would potentially have to double by the year 2030 without significant reforms, fiscal reforms, just to stave off default. Now, there's been other people like Boston University professor Larry Kaltikoff, who said the U.S. government's debt is much higher than what they show. They show this $38 trillion. And the intro to one of his books said, thanks to accounting that would make Enron blush, America's insolvency goes far beyond what our leaders are actually disclosing. So the writing is on the wall. The government's running out of money. We're working on borrowed time when it comes to the fiscal situation of our government. There's plenty of academic research out there to suggest that rates will have to move higher in the future. There's plenty of history suggests right now the top income tax rate's 37%. In 1944 or 45, I think it was 94%. So there's precedent and there's evidence as to why that will have to happen. So when I say stratospherically higher, maybe I should start thinking about strategically paying my tax bill along the way versus postponing it and getting blindsided by a huge tax bill later. For sure. Well, that was going to be my next question. I mean, obviously on this show, we have to talk in generalities, right? Because until you can sit down with someone in the financial planning environment, this question, the answer is going to be it depends. But generally speaking, when do you find is the most optimal time for someone to engage in Roth conversions? Before, during retirement? Talk a little bit about the timing of it. So the timing is when it makes sense for them. It depends, right? Yes. That's the answer. But generally, it's when your income, if you're retired, you're no longer drawing income from your employer. That's typically a good time to do that. One of the biggest things that I think is eye-opening for a lot of people, I'll give you an example. I met with a couple. They have a couple $1 million in their accounts between the two of them, and it's all qualified money, right? All tax deferred, yeah. Tax deferred money. They've done a fantastic job of saving.
And they're both, I think, 69 and 70. So they've got a couple years before they're going to have to start taking RMDs. But when we were walking through their tax map, we could see the RMD that they're going to have to take, that required minimum distribution, when they're in their 80s. It's over $200,000. In some cases, it would be over $280,000.
Wow.
And that's just the RMD that they have to take out.
Yep.
They don't need $280,000 to live off of. And their Social Security is also good.
Right.
They have other sources of income.
Which is a great place to be, right?
It's a great place to be,
awesome.
but you end up with just giving so much of your money away. Their tax bill, it goes from, let's say it's in the $10,000 to $15,000 range every year, and then it jumps up into the $40,000 range.
Wow.
And so that's just money that they're giving to the government that we didn't have to do that. And so by coming in, we were able to determine when is the best time to start those Roth conversions. So the goal is to pay it at a known rate. So when you're asking when is the most optimal time, it's when it makes sense and based on the tax brackets that you're facing today.
Right. Well, and it's not something typically that folks want to do all in one fell swoop, because, man, that can really jack you up from a tax perspective. This is something that takes, you want to be systematic, you want to be strategic, doing it over as many years as possible, right?
Yeah, and here's my kind of take on it is like you've got the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that came in and reduced or made permanent, everything's written in pencil when it comes to tax law.
Sure, but we know at least for the next couple of years,
Right.
we know what tax rates are going to be.
And they're some of the lowest rates we've ever had.
Yep.
Some people say it's the third lowest tax regime we've ever had. We just know that they're pretty low. And like when you get into like 22, most Americans are paying around the 22% bracket, like the middle income earners. Well, that's like 30% lower than what they were paying in the year 2000. They were paying 28% then was their effective marginal rate. And like if you go to the 24% bracket, that's only 2% more. So I go 22, 24, that doesn't really give me much heartburn. So I happen to be a big fan of the 24% bracket. And let's say that my income between my spouse and I takes me towards the top of the 22% bracket and I'm still working, but I'm not yet 63. I'm still going to think about doing conversions, not specific advice, but I'm not going to be closed-minded to the idea, because for 2% more, I can convert. There's well over close to $200,000 of runway of conversion, and I'm not subject to IRMA yet, because the IRMA, income-related monthly adjustment amount, those Medicare surcharges that you talked about, those are a 2-year look back. Well, you're not eligible until 65, so the year you turn 63 is the first year you actually have to worry about that. So if I'm 60, 61, 62, there's a lot of reasons. There's things that happen that year. I'm subject or eligible, I should say, for like in my 401k for not just catch-up, but a super catch-up contribution. So like 401k, I think is over $11,000 of catch-up contribution. So I can reduce my AGI if I need to and do these conversions. And that's kind of pulling in both ends of the string with that one. But there's things I can do that reduce my AGI and help me to do larger conversions along the way. So there's a lot of different strategies to consider. Yeah,
clearly a lot to know, a lot to work through, a lot that has to be done in the privacy of your offices, in the financial planning environment, to figure out what all this means for you. So we invite you to schedule your time to come in and see what this means for you by scheduling your complimentary written financial plan. 866-256-7778 is the number to call to schedule yours, or you're welcome to scan that QR code. That will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
Have you ever taken your family out to dinner and been shocked at how expensive the tax bill was? Well, guess what? Right now in the United States, there are around $37 trillion in tax-qualified retirement accounts like pensions, 401ks, and IRAs, and the vast majority of those dollars have never been taxed. Hi, I'm Jeremy Gove, partner and financial advisor at Stonebridge Wealth Systems, and I want to take a moment today to have you think about how much money you have saved in tax-deferred retirement accounts. Did you know that not all of that money is yours? That's right. When you put money into an IRA or 401k, that is like going into partnership with the IRS. At Stonebridge Wealth Systems, we have created a free online tax calculator to show you what you could pay in future taxes on your retirement accounts. Go to stonebridgetaxbill.com or scan the QR code below. That's stonebridgetaxbill.com.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass, where today we've been shining a light on one of the biggest threats to your hard-earned wealth. That's taxes in retirement. But here's the good news. You don't have to settle for the government's tax plan for you. There are strategies that are available to you to help you choose how and when you pay taxes. And we don't want you paying any more to the IRS than you are legally required to pay. So if you've not yet gone to visit this free resource, we encourage you to do so. StonebridgeTaxBill.com. You can also get there by scanning that QR code. And I want to go back. We were talking about when it makes sense for folks to do a Roth conversion. When does it not make sense typically for someone to engage in that strategy?
So there's like times when it doesn't make sense if you're still working and your income is higher than, so I would end up eating up any of the benefits if I have to pull all the money out of my IRA and I have to pay the tax on that. That's obviously not a good example of a time to do that.
So like 32, 35% tax bracket, that's where I usually take a pause. Is
right. You're like,
is this still worth it? But that's just not where most people are at.
Right.
Charitable planning, right, is probably another one where you don't have to convert everything, but I think there's a sweet spot because you can still have your standard deduction. If you're going to give a lot of money to charity and use QCDs and things like that, that's a reason not to be as aggressive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So clearly so much goes into this. I know we only have a minute and a half left and we have to be more general on this show. But for folks who have this report, they go to StonebridgeTaxBill.com, they print off that report, they come in and meet with you. What is that going to look like for them to make sure that they are enacting the right tax strategy as part of their overall financial plan?
Well, I think the planning is the key, right? We want to make sure that the plan fits what they need for their family. It's not only for their immediate income needs, but it's also for their extended family as well. It could be looked at as an estate planning tool as well. And so the process is simple. We walk through, we gather all the information, we learn about your goals, your objectives, and your dreams, your visions, the things that you want to do with your money, and we put a plan together to make that happen. And the goal is, it's not just what you have, it's what you get to keep. We want to put a plan together that reduces your tax liability. We want to put a plan together that reduces your beneficiary's tax liability as well.
Yes, for sure. There's that trickle-down effect. So the sooner you can get in front of it, the better it's going to be for not just yourself, but your loved ones as well, right?
Yes.
Well, awesome. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, thank you for watching. Again, the good news is you have more control than you might realize over your tax situation. We invite you to meet with the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems to see what that could look like for you. 866-256-7778 is the number to call to schedule your complimentary written financial plan. Thanks so much for joining us. Be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on the Retirement Compass.